All right, we'd like to call our March board meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. Welcome, everybody. We have a declaration of a quorum, 7 members present, and that will bring us to item C1, Mr. Martindale. Oh, well, hold on. Let me finish this real quick. Welcome to this meeting of College Station Independent School Board District Board of Trustees. We were elected at large to represent the interests of our community and our state in educating our students. Our mission for our students in this district is success each life, each day, each hour. We adhere to all pertinent laws, policies, and procedures in posting agendas and conducting our meeting. The detailed agenda information was made available to us at least 72 hours in advance. We've all come to this meeting informed and prepared. We've just completed a workshop meeting where we heard reports and discussed much of the information needed to make decisions in either this meeting or in upcoming meetings. This is a meeting of the 7 trustees in a public setting rather than a public meeting. As such, public comment is included on the agenda at a specific time, requires us to listen rather than take action, so as to abide by the Open Meetings Act. We're pleased that you have taken the time this evening to join us. We're very proud of this school district. We thank you for your interest in and support of our students.
Thank you, Mr. Warrack. This evening, we have students from Creekview and Spring Creek Elementaries that are going to assist us with our pledges and our moments of silence to introduce our students or principals of those respective campuses, Mr. Southern and Mr. McKeever.
Good evening. I'm Chris Southern. I'm the principal of Spring Creek Elementary School. Glad to be with you tonight. I've got 2 of our great Cardinals with us, 2 of our 4th graders. We've got Kennedy and Wyatt. I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about themselves and our school. Go ahead, Kennedy.
Hello, my name is Kennedy, and Kennedy Turner, and my favorite subject is ELA.
Hello, my name is Wyatt Abbott, and my favorite thing to do in my free time is play sports.
No kidding.
And I'm Mike McKeever, and I'm the principal at Creekview Elementary, and I have Amelia and Jenna here to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Amelia. My favorite thing to do in school is GT, and when I grow up, I want to own a smoothie shop, and yeah.
Hello, my name is Jenna, and my favorite thing to do in school is learn about ELA because I like reading. When I grow up, I want to own a cattle ranch because I like cows, and in my free time, I like to play volleyball.
Please stand for the U.S. pledge. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Please remain standing for the moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated.
How about a round of applause? Wonderful job, guys. Pictures? Very good. We're good.
Do you not read the agenda? Never did. Just have to read it. I don't read the agenda.
All right, that'll bring us to item C2. We'd like to recognize the artwork at the back of the boardroom from our kids there at Creekview and Spring Creek. Make sure you take a look at that before you leave this evening. Item D, board reports. Who would like to go first?
The District Education Improvement Council met Wednesday, March 8th, reviewed the District Improvement Plan Progress Monitoring, which was just presented us to in workshop. And then the council approved staff development waiver as well as the modified schedule state assessment days, which are I-1 and I-2 respectively on the consent agenda.
Personnel Advisory Committee met on March 2nd. Talked about a couple things. One, some issues with dental insurance that we're looking into with some of the dentists not taking those. Then the cool thing was they're starting to vote on Employees of the Year. So some good things there. And then really conversation about the teacher incentive allotment and some areas, some questions that came out of that and things that need to be worked on, such as trying to get it into the high schools there and making sure that all the teachers who are eligible are able to take advantage of that. So some things still to be worked out and questions to answer on that.
Head Start Policy Council did not meet this month. We do next month, though. But I did want to share that application roundup is March 29th from 11 to 6, and also on March 30th from 9 to 1. And this all happens at the Larry J. Ringer Library. And then for Intergovernmental Committee, we just met yesterday, and it was pretty interesting. We had not really a panel discussion, but we had representatives from both cities, Bryan and College Station, and also our superintendents from College Station and Bryan talk about the bills right now that are in legislation. And so just to kind of give us an idea of ones that are out there that they're concerned about, the city of Bryan, there were a lot of bills that they're very concerned about. First off, did you guys know that they have filed over 8,200 bills? Wasn't that it? It's almost 8,300 bills. It was something crazy have been filed this year, which is it's the most that they've ever had filed. House alone has filed over 5,000. So there's a lot that they're going to be going through this legislative session. And both the superintendents from the schools really talked mostly about SB 8, the voucher, what they're calling it something different now. But that's what they talked about. The positive about all of that, and I think some of us are probably going to talk about that a little bit more, but the positive about all of that is that this is bringing public schools together, right? And so, public schools have never been closer, is the feeling right now, because everyone's together on this and in opposing Senate Bill 8.
I guess three things. SHAC does not meet. We are done with official meetings for the year, although I think it's next month that SHAC will bring their kind of summary for the year to the board, so we'll look forward to that. Education Foundation, lots of fun events coming up, but the next one on the agenda is the Grant Patrol. Hopefully a lot of you will attend that, but it really is an opportunity to highlight and see some of the Education Foundation's money and efforts go to work in our classrooms, right? To go out there and see it in action. And this year, the Grant Patrol is going to College Station High School and to Riverbend Elementary. So that's always an exciting morning. Only other thing I wanted to just note is that a few of us did, speaking of what Ms. Nolan was talking about along those lines, a few of us did go attend the visit from our governor in Bryan a few weeks ago, and there were some people in this room, but there were other people there who were also representing our public schools, not just I personally was there to listen and learn, but also really to represent public education and to make sure that we talk to people and people understand the implications of some of the bills that are out there. I think it's my job to do that because I think, and also to help correct some of the misinformation that is out there. So I was happy to show up for that, and I know some other folks did as well. And I think we need to keep speaking up for our public schools, particularly right now. That's it. I won't go into any more depth on that. That's enough.
Grant Showcase, not Grant Patrol.
Oh, right.
You're good.
Thank you, sir. Showcase. Thank you.
My turn now?
I think so.
All right. I was waiting for your cue, Mr. Hart. A few things coming up on tonight's agenda. We'll be requesting the board to approve the membership for our long-range facility planning committee. Upon approval of that membership, those folks will begin, or that committee of 48 will begin meeting as early as the 1st of April. We have tentatively scheduled 6 meetings. And hopefully at that time, I don't know if we'll make the May meeting. It's possible, more likely June. We'll come forward with a possible recommendation as to what would be considered or comprise the next possible bond propositions, which would be for November of this year. Earlier in our workshop, we got progress update on our district improvement plan, which is aligned to year 2 of our strategic plan. I appreciate Dr. Hickman, Dr. Perry, and Ms. Parkerson for reviewing those items with us. The work on the strategic plan, as I mentioned in workshop, has really aligned the efforts among our campuses as well as our district, and is helping us really evolve from an instructional standpoint. So really excited about that continued work. Also, we're receiving an update from Ms. Strauss on current year budget. We're tracking toward a balanced budget, so let's take a moment and just reflect and be grateful for that. As I explained to Chamber this morning, our revenue sources stay consistent. However, we still have to manage increased costs with inflation. So kudos to Ms. Strauss and her folks for helping us navigate these financial times. Also, of course, at workshop earlier, Mr. Hall, Ms. Strauss gave us a good review of work from the November 21 bond and those projects, not only those that have been handled this past summer, those coming up this next summer. We have 3 on the agenda tonight for the board to consider. That's the renovations at Pebble Creek for approximately $3 million, at A&M Consolidated for approximately $5 million, and the natatorium for $2 million. Student success, real quick. We did have 8 National Merit Scholar finalists. 26 of our band students advanced to state solo and ensemble, and 39 choir students advanced to state solo and ensemble. Both our comprehensive high schools and all 3 of our middle school orchestras earned sweepstakes ratings at their UIL contest. CSHS Orchestra had the opportunity to perform at Carnegie Hall over spring break. And we have district champions in soccer. Lady Tigers Soccer claimed the district championship, as well as CSHS boys soccer. So our kids continue to do a wonderful job and excel. That's due to, of course, their hard work, but also the hard work of our sponsors, directors, and coaches as well. Mr. Warwick?
All right, that'll bring us to item E, hearing of citizens. Any other? Okay. During this time, public comments are welcome. The Open Meetings Act prevents us from responding to speakers regarding items not on the agenda. Comments related to items on the agenda may be discussed during deliberations on that specific agenda item. Please complete the note card and give it to the executive assistant. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Those needing an interpreter may have up to 6 minutes. Each person has 1 opportunity at the microphone regardless of minutes used. Unused minutes may not be accrued by another speaker. The executive assistant will time the comments and alert the president when time has expired. The board asks that those addressing the board refrain from derogatory comments. And I have Mr. Tracy Melder. Are they using this microphone? Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Horak, other distinguished members of the board, Mr. Martindale. My name is Tracy Melder. I reside at 5008 Harbortown Court. The purpose of addressing the board tonight is related to item K4. I want to congratulate College Station for the hitting barn, but I was, the president of Tiger Club, I was approached by an anonymous donor that offered to backstop the $140,000 for Tiger Club, and would just like to propose that the same partnership with the district on the 73 versus 140 for the 180, so we can make some facilities improvement as well as at Consol. Thank you. Turn it off.
Thank you. That will bring us to item F, the consent agenda. Those items are G, I1, I2, J2, J3, J4, J5, J6, J7. And that is all.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Hall, second by Dr. Payne. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. That'll bring us to item H, H1, receive a report related to counseling and guidance services in CSISD. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak, and board members. For our monthly program report, we have Ms. Chrissy Hester. I was looking for you, Chrissy. I was like, wait, Chrissy skipped the board meeting, and she has a program report. Chrissy's our Director of Student Services. She's giving support on guidance counselors.
So thank you, Mr. Martindale and Mr. Horak and members of the board. As your former guidance counselor, Mr. Horak, and principal, it gives me great pleasure to share with this room what a great job we did with you, because I could tell some stories. So I won't, though. I've been told to
Ms.
keep
Hester,
the strip.
that's not on the script.
Oh.
We discussed this already.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
I could tell some on Member Blaine as well, but his are much nicer, so. Okay.
If we can get on with this, that'd be great.
I'm sorry. Mike said I had 45 minutes, so I'm going to try to keep that down a little bit. So, what guides a guidance counselor in CSISD? Obviously, I'm not doing a very good job of that. So, the role of a school counselor is to design and deliver school counseling programs that improve student outcomes. School counselors lead, advocate, and collaborate to promote equity and access for all students by connecting their school counseling program to the school's academic mission and the school's improvement plan. So people often confuse the role of a school psychologist and the role of a school guidance counselor, but they have very different roles. School psychologists focus on mental health services for special education students and also on educational testing. Guidance counselors provide services for all students that focus on career development, educational services, and personal guidance. Research has found that a comprehensive school guidance program has a positive impact on the overall success of students by supporting and enhancing academically, behaviorally, and with attendance. TEA have standards. They have 10 standards that fall very specifically that support Goal 3 of our strategic plan, but these 10 standards are really the overall compass of what the counselors do when they're planning their guidance programs. Within those 10 standards are the 4 major components of a comprehensive school guidance counseling program. They are guidance curriculum. That's the curriculum that the counselors use when they go into the classrooms, and they work there all around decision-making, goal setting, reframing things, learning how to communicate, and responsible behavior. The next and an important one that we do at all levels is the individual planning, personal and social issues, academic issues, study skills, career awareness, how to understand, helping kids understand their own individual needs and planning. Responsive services is where we spend most of our time. Relationships, abuse, grief, death, substance abuse, family problems, concern and coping skills, any academic issues, dropout prevention. That tends to be the focus of what the counselors are doing, particularly since COVID and as we've come back from COVID. System support really encompasses the whole 10 standards from TEA. That's the program development. We work with the school. With the parent and teacher education, we help do staff development, community outreach, and public education for the schools. There's a percentage of time they're supposed to spend on everything, but we do the best we can on that. In College Station ISD, elementary schools each have one counselor each. They are responsible for approximately 600 students. In the intermediate and middle schools, we have been blessed though the last 2 years because we've been allowed to have some differentiated staffing as the enrollment in the schools differentiated a little bit. In Cypress Grove and CSMS, those schools are a little bit smaller, so we have one counselor. In the Oakwood and AMCMS, those schools are a little bit bigger, so we've been allowed to have 1.5 counselors. And then our larger Pecan Trail and Welborn Middle School, those schools are over 800, and that's been a lot of impact on the counseling program. So we've been allowed to have 2 counselors, and it's made all the difference in the world. We really appreciate that. The comprehensive high schools, those counselors are responsible for about 525 students each. And then at College View, we have one dean of students, and she's responsible for about 137 students. The guidance counselors are supported by 2 mental health counselors that we've been blessed to have. We started with one about 10 years ago, and then about 5 years ago added a second one. So we now have one that deals with pre-K through 4, and then one that deals with grades 5 through 12. And they are available on call for support and guidance in a crisis situation, in a family situation. They do some long-term counseling with families and with kids. We're moving in the direction of, we have a lot of crisis with behaviors, so we're looking at next year having the pre-K through 12, pre-K through 4 counselor do some more involvement with teachers in classrooms when the behavior gets bad, how to train the teachers to deal with the behaviors rather than call for help. We feel like we need to give some more instruction on that, so we're going to rearrange a little bit more of what she does. We're also, in 2019, one of the things that happens with guidance counseling was we need to make referrals for families to outside counselors. Everybody needs an outside counselor. Everybody needs a school counselor, okay? So we all need a little bit of help, and we make referrals out into the community. But often I'll say, gosh, Mr. Horak, you need some counseling, and your family needs to help you. So, but why don't you call these counselors? But it's going to take 3 or 4 months for you to get in. So by then, everything has changed. So we worked with a committee of some outside psychologists and some counselors in the school and asked the board to change their policy. So we now allow private counselors, private practice counselors into the school. They're trained, their background check, and we have about 34 that come in. So they come into the school day, saves a whole lot of time for the child. They don't have to, parent doesn't have to come check them out of school, so they're only missing 1 class rather than sometimes 2 or 3 classes. So we've been really thrilled with this. The funding, the payment is between the parent and the private counselor. School has nothing to do with that. We simply provide a space for them. And then in 2021, in the middle of COVID, I got a call from Texas A&M, and this is another great support, which we've been very excited to have accessible to us. But telemedicine has started, and so telehealth comes, and they called and said, hey, we have a big grant, and we want to see if you all will pilot with us to do some telemedicine, telehealth counseling. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't think I want to have a counseling over the internet, But we agreed to it, and it has been absolutely wonderful. The counselors are trained. The kids come, we know when their schedule is, and so they know they're very careful not to schedule the same class, so they don't have to miss the same period every day. Often when you're meeting with an outside counselor, they want you to come at the same time every week, and so this allows them to have a variety of what class they miss, so they don't miss the same one. The parent can actually join from home or from work into the session. The counselor at school can join in if they want to. We know when they're there, and we have a support system in case there's been anything hard in the counseling session that they need to have a support system when it's done. We're there available for that. So it has been a wonderful program. It's highly utilized. We are now on our 3rd year of it, and this summer they're going to have a summer program that's in person. But one of the things about it is they schedule 6 appointments to begin with, so you don't just have to know you can pay for 2 appointments. It's free. You schedule 6 appointments, and then they determine at that point if they're going to need more. If you do, you go into a different category. So it's just been fabulous, and we're blessed to be able to be supported by that. One of the other things that the counselors are required to do, for middle school and high school, they have to do a session on dating violence every year and on bullying. And then at the high school level, they have to make sure that the AED, CPR experience happens, not certification, but they have to have experience. And then they have to have a course in how to interact with a police officer. Both of those last two go on the high school transcript, and they can't graduate till they've done those. And that's, the counselors help coordinate all of that. Counselors also cover some staff development for the schools. They work very closely with the principals in the school. Obviously, they're part of the campus improvement plan. They do a session every year on bullying, child abuse recognition, trauma training, and data desegregation and interpretation. They're very involved in 504 and special ed assistant, helping with the academic, making the referral, and then with anything with ESL and LPAC meetings. Our program challenges are obviously our ratio. We have, every counselor has 500 to 700 students, and it's recommended with no funding by TEA for each counselor to have 250 to 350. So, it's a little problem there. Another issue is the emotional and academic aftermath of COVID-19, increase in challenging behaviors, increase in special ed and 504 referrals, and the time it takes to handle just the referral system and then the associated need with those referrals. State mandated testing responsibilities, they help with that. Depends on what campus they're on, whether they're in charge of it. 504 coordination, and then MTSS. They help with master schedule development and support. They're not totally in charge of that, but they are a big help. A big time zap, again, is the special education referral packets, because those come in a lot and they take up a lot of time. They're very important, and we want to spend that time carefully doing their observations and working with the parents to get the educational needs their kids need. Just the time is what counselors need to address the individual needs of their family and to plan their guidance program activities that school needs. Oops. Okay, Molly, what did I do? Here we go. Nope, I'm going backwards. Future plans. CSISD is in the process of researching to support the compliance with the state TEKS requirement that we provide instruction in positive character traits and personal skills. The Education Code 29.906 and the State Board of Education has been told they will integrate positive character traits and personal skills into the essential knowledge and skills adopted from kindergarten through grade 12. So we've been taking time to look at different curriculums. We have a couple that we like, a couple that we don't like. We tried one out that we weren't very happy with, and we're looking at more. And you can see the whole list of all the things that character traits and personal skills that need to be included in this instruction. And of course, who wouldn't want all those character traits, both as a model for a teacher, for a family, and that's one of the things we hope to get established in the next few years. 45 minutes. Questions, concerns?
Now we have time for those stories about Jeff.
You want me to do it? They're like.
Thank you, Chrissy. We appreciate it. We're going to cut this off right now.
Okay. I have questions. So I do have a couple questions. So are the private practice counselors coming into the schools, is that being utilized by our families? Yes. It is? Mm-hmm. That is fantastic. I remember whenever we did that, and fantastic.
Yeah, thank you to the board for changing the policy so we could do that.
Right. Yeah. But we didn't think of it. So great call on y'all's part. Also, the T-Chat. I went to that session at the last TASB thing that we had, not realizing that we already had it here. And I asked.
We were one of the first pilot schools.
Oh, okay. And I did. Whenever I learned about it that day, I was like, oh my goodness, what a fantastic program. But what I did learn that day was that, if I remember correctly, is that it's not meant to be a long-term solution. It is more of an emergency solution for some families, correct? So if a kid needs to see a counselor, they typically can find somebody that can fit them in a decent time frame rather than having to wait. Am I remembering this correctly?
That is true, but they start out committing to 6 appointments. Some of them don't need 6 appointments. They can have 2 appointments and they're done.
But they can usually meet with them almost immediately.
Oh, that's been the beauty of it. Right. Because when we need somebody for counseling I can hear somebody's phone went off because I've gone over my minutes.
It's my fault.
So, yes, it's not meant to be short-term, long-term, but they do have a program if they get into a situation with a family or a student that they think they're going to need extensive, they go into another track.
Right.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I just remember thinking that program was, and I'm glad that we're able to utilize that one as
The
as well.
availability of it is the gift, because
Right.
we can't get people in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I've had that experience myself. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes you can be on a waiting list for months.
Yes.
And then it's who are you going to get?
Well, and the counselors were delighted, the private counselors, because they're not busy all day, and then from 4 to 7, they're booked solid, and that's why it was taking so long.
Right.
And parents don't want to go 4 to 7. That's when they have all their sports practice and clubs,
Right.
and so it's a mess. But
Right.
Teach-At has been tremendous.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'm going to say is I love that y'all are looking into a curriculum that would help teach all of those things. There was a book that I was turned on to by one of our principals, by Ms. Elder, the Michelle Borba book.
Thrivers.
And Thrivers.
Yes.
And I am a huge proponent of this book.
A lot of our counselors are using that in their lesson format, in their guidance curriculum.
And a lot of the characteristics that she points out you had listed up there. And so I loved that book. I loved her message. And
when she came, when Gwen had her, we were invited as a group of counselors, so we got to
get to talk to
meet
her.
with her.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. And again, it just shows you the depth and breadth, am I saying it right, of what public education does for our kiddos. And thank you. Thank you for taking care of all of them.
Thank
in
you.
all the ways.
And I think I'll just expand on a couple of those thoughts a little bit. Obviously, the role that these people do in our schools is tremendously important. And as some of the data you showed, it shows that they are also, we're understaffed in some of those areas. And probably every school in Texas is understaffed in those areas based on the TEA's own recommendations. And I'm going to go back and study the one where you also, the slide where you pointed out the different roles that those people are playing, but how they change or how they're different from the different grade levels, right? I think that's important too. These people are playing a lot of different roles in our children's lives, and it's kind of different over the years. And always the piece that I try to understand, and you've mentioned it somewhat, is the part that they're playing, the important part of it with the mental health of our students. And I know we mentioned you have the psychologists, you also have the specific mental health counselors, but I also know that every one of our counselors in our schools is also touching the mental health of our students, which is so critically important. And that's just a big umbrella phrase anyway, the mental health. But I'm glad we're doing, I love the things that you're doing, bring the counselors in, the Teach-At, the things that are free. I wish we could have more resources in these areas as well, if we could provide as a district more resources. And so I guess my other thought is that the point you mentioned, you're going to try to use some of these people to help with the classroom management part of it. That was, I think, the other thing that stood out for me too, because I think that's something we hear a lot right now. Post-COVID, worse than ever, is having our kids, our students have every opportunity to learn in their classrooms, and it starts with being able to have classroom management and classroom behavior. So I think I was glad to hear, obviously we recognize it, but that there's going to be some focus on that.
Support for the teachers.
Yes, really, yes. Because wish there could probably be more of that moving forward. Because again, it affects every kid and every teacher. So lots of important things these people do. Thank you very much.
Anything else? Thank you, Ms. Hester.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Chrissy.
That'll bring us to item J1, consider approval of the long-range facilities and bond planning committee membership. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Ms. Twight. With more information on this agenda item, we have our CFO, Ms. Amy Dross.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale. So last month, you as a board chartered a committee for long-range facility planning and bond planning, actually, for 2023. So we're bringing forth tonight a list of members for that committee. So we got some names from board members, campus principals, and other administrators, and we began calling. What we are looking for is a diverse membership, representative of the entire district. So we're looking at where they're physically located to get that representation. But we also wanted to make sure that these people could contribute to the overall purpose of the committee and the district. So we have brought forth a total of 48 names. These individuals are parents, grandparents, students. We have 6 students on this committee, business leaders, civic leaders, educators, administrators, community members, and retirees. So you can see a very diverse group that represents a cross-section of the community. But we talked individually to these to make sure that they could make a commitment to this committee. It's not going to be long and stretched out over several months. It'll be about 6 meetings in a very short period of time. We're trying to try to conclude before summer and before graduation, because we know that all gets very busy. But we have 48 names of people that have committed to this committee, and ask for your approval with that tonight.
I'd move to approve the committee as presented.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Ben, a second by Ms. Nolan. Any further discussion?
Just an advanced thank you for them for this service and the time they're going to put into it. Also, a thank you to the people who, I mean, there were a lot of people who stepped up and were willing to be on it and maybe didn't work out to fit the profile that we needed to represent the district. So thanks for all those people as well. And I just also would add that we had the chance to meet the facilitator, the board did a few weeks ago, and I was very impressed. I think she's looks like they're going to do a great job facilitating this important effort for our district. So looking forward to seeing it in motion.
I'm just impressed we found someone named Bond. I'm a little disappointed we didn't find somebody named Facilities.
We'll try harder next time.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
That'll bring us to item K1, consider authorizing the superintendent to enter into final negotiations on CSP 23-001 with Rava Construction for renovations to Pebble Creek Elementary, the amount of $3.095 million, utilizing 21 bond funds. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. White, and board members. With additional details on K1 agenda item is Mr. John Hall, our Executive Director of Facilities. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale, Mr. Horak, members of the board. This is the first of 3 projects I'll be presenting to you this evening, but before I do so, I just want to take a moment to thank College Station ISD voters for passing the 21 bond and for trusting us with the funds to accomplish these projects in support of CSISD. So important. This particular agenda item is for the replacement of finishes, carpet, hard flooring, casework, and new paint over at the Pebble Creek Elementary School campus. VOK Architects helped us go through our design process, met with Blair Grindy, myself, Renee Ramirez, and this project is being processed as a competitive sealed proposal project. So we advertised as required by statute, and we received proposals on March 2nd. And 4 proposals received that day. The lowest was received by Rava Construction in the amount of $3,095,000. The proposals were scored by the evaluation team consisting of myself, Director of Purchasing Carmela Schaefer, Assistant Director of Facilities Renee Ramirez, Construction Inspector Tom Stewart, and VOK Architect Melissa Fleming. And the best score was received by Rava Construction at that time. I did include the recommendation letter and scoring sheet for your reference if needed. This work would be scheduled for the summer of 23 so that everything would be fully operational again by the beginning of school. So it is recommended that the College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees consider approval of award of the Pebble Creek Elementary School renovations project to Rava Construction in the amount of $3,095,000 utilizing 2021 bond funds. With that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments you might have.
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Hall, second by Dr. Payne. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. I think you're going to stay up there. K2, consider authorizing the superintendent to enter into final negotiations on CSP 23-006 with Rava Construction for Phase 2 of renovations to A&M Consolidated High School in the amount of $5.06 million, utilizing 21 bond funds. Mr. Martindale.
Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale, Mr. Horak, members of the board. This is the largest of the three projects I'll be pitching past you tonight for Phase 2 to A&M Consolidated High School for approximately 40% of the campus. I gave a little more detail in the workshop earlier, so I'll go through a little quicker for this. But this is for the second phase. It would renovate the entire principal's office suite area, the auditorium, and all of the classrooms on the first and second floor of the science wing of the building. So basically the southern third or so of the A&M Consolidated High School campus. This project also will help us to reconfigure and harden the security vestibule up front, replace existing lighting with LED lighting in that section. Also in the parking lot too, we're picking up some LED lighting out there, so that'll help. And we're even creating 2 additional science labs from other computer labs. We're going to convert those. VLK Architects did help us, of course, process the design documents after a series of meetings with Consol Principal Gwen Elder. We had some other people join us as well, Chief Financial Officer Amy Drozd, Executive Director of Secondary Education Tiffany Parkerson, myself, and Assistant Director of Facilities Renee Ramirez. We had a good little series of meetings to work through the scope on this. This project is being processed as a competitive seal proposal. So the project was advertised as required by statute, and we received bids on February 23rd for this particular project. We received 2 proposals that day, the lowest which came from Rava Construction in the amount of $5,060,000. The evaluation team consisted of myself, Director of Purchasing Carmela Schaefer, and VLK Architect Melissa Fleming. And at that time, the best score was received by Rava Construction. I did attach the bid tab and VLK's recommendation letter and scoring sheet for your reference if needed. Once again, this work would be scheduled for the summer of '23, so everything would be fully operational again by the start of school in August. So it is recommended that the College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees consider approval of award of the A&M Consolidated High School Renovations Phase 2 project to Rava Construction in the amount of $5,060,000, utilizing 2021 bond funds. With that, I'll open it up to questions or comments.
I'd move to accept as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Benz, second by Dr. Payne. Any further discussion?
I just do want to make a quick comment, kind of reiterate what I said earlier. This is really for this one and the previous, just that I think it's extremely important that we are continuing to update our older facilities, and so excited to see both of these projects. It's a lot more, I know, than a lot more than just updating in both of them, lots of other work. But for anybody who's been into some of our schools that have gone through these types of updates and renovations, it really is amazing what can be done and how they really can look like brand new schools. So again, I'm glad that we are investing in these and that really our community is as well. So thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Brings us to item K3, consider approval of contract for renovations to the district natatorium to Merrick Brothers Construction using the Goodbye Purchasing Program in the amount of $2.1 million, utilizing 21 bond funds. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale, Mr. Horak, members of the board. This is the last of the 3 projects tonight for the renovations to our natatorium, which is located over on the College Station Middle School campus. As you may recall, this was Proposition C, all on its own for the 21 bond package. So all of the funds for this will have to go into the natatorium project. So we may have a follow-up for this one as well. VLK Architects did help us process our design documents. Once again, we did have some good input from Athletic Director Kevin Starnes, Assistant Athletic Director Megan Simek, and Tiger Swim Coach Jenny Marquardt gave us some good feedback on everything as well. The overall scope includes basically a whole renovation of that main room where the pool is located, including tile, plaster, paint, exhaust fans, and even some LED lighting in there. So it's going to look like a new place when we're finished. This project is being processed a little bit differently than the others in that this one is for purchasing cooperative bidders only. So we did solicit 4 different firms to give us a proposal for this project, and we received proposals from 3 of those on bid day, which marked March 2nd of 23. Those were from Aggieland Construction, Merrick Brothers Construction, and Rava Construction. Our evaluation team consisted of myself, Assistant Director of Facilities Renee Ramirez, and VOK Architect Melissa Fleming. We did review all of the proposals to make sure that everyone had a full and complete scope, which they did, which made the lowest cost proposal from Merrick Brothers the best value for the district, and that's how they were scored out. Please see recommendation letter from VOK and the scoring sheets attached for your reference. This is well within our budget for the project. And I would like to note that this project is not going to be waiting until June to start. This one would be starting a little bit quicker, more like April. As soon as we can get approval tonight, assuming that this happens, we'll get them a notice to proceed, and they'll be off and running in just a few short weeks. So it's recommended that the College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees consider approval of award of the natatorium renovations project to Merrick Brothers Construction in the amount of $2,100,000 utilizing 2021 bond funds. With that, I'll open up to questions or comments.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Payne, second by Mr. Hall. Any further discussion, questions?
Just like to say, for those of you who weren't able to be here for the workshop, go back and look at some of the drawings, the renderings. It's going to be a 180-degree difference in that facility, so it'll be something that the Consol swim team and the whole community can be proud of.
Maybe we can get our teacher swim club that they wanted to start.
Oh, right. Blaine, did you swim there? Okay. So it's been there since you were there. Okay.
Personal preference. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Hall. K4, consider authorizing the superintendent to enter into final negotiations on CSP 23-005 for upgrades to the CSHS baseball, softball batting cages with NBCM management in the total amount of $180,800, utilizing 2015 bond funds in the amount of $73,730, and a contribution from the Cougar Booster Club in the amount of $107.70. Mr. Martindale.
With additional information on this item, our CFO, Ms. Strauss.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale, Mr. Horak, members of the board. I think it'd be beneficial to give you a little history on this particular project. So in November of 2020, College Station administration was first approached about the fundraising efforts of Cougar Club for the purpose of upgrading their current batting cages that serves both baseball and softball from an uncovered facility to a covered facility. At that time, we were made aware that they had $80,000 available for this particular project, and they had estimated that the project would be about $107,000. I think they had hopes of moving forward very quickly and getting this for the 2021 baseball season. But we just got involved. Of course, we had a lot of questions, and there's a different process that we have to go through. So we explained to them that government code requires us that we have an architect or engineer involved in a project of this size, and that we also have to go through a process, a procurement process, in this particular case of a competitive steel proposal. further research, as we started visiting with athletic administration and maintenance, is there was a few other items that needed to be done with this project, that being some electrical work and excavation that had not been included. So we're kind of skeptical of the price. But we still began discussions in the spring of 2021 with administration in the athletic department and the coaches, and had VLK begin to start doing the drawings and specifications. Their estimates came in, they felt it was even going to be higher than the 107, but we weren't sure. So we kind of looked at that. By the time we got to that point, Cougar Club had said, well, we now have 86,000 available. So, looking at that, knowing it was going to be high, we did look at what resources we might have. The only thing we had at that time, and still, would be some 2015 bond funds, but only to the amount of maybe matching that 86, but it would take board approval for the project and that funding source. In August of 2021, just to get a good idea of what the project would cost, we went ahead and put it out for competitive seal proposal. So that we would have some good numbers. The total price that came in at that time was over $300,000. So because of a lack of funding, we never brought that forward to the Board of Trustees. We didn't have that kind of funding. Cougar Club remained committed to this project and came back to us later and said we are going to continue to raise funds for this, and actually increase the total amount by the spring of 2022 to $140,000. We are also working with coaches, administration, architects, and engineers to look at the scope of the project to see what we could do to scale that back and maybe reduce the cost. So we were successful for that. Thought we were kind of getting closer. So at the beginning of 2023, we put it back out with this reduced scope to see what the cost might be this time. Did it with the base building and then alternates for the turf and the netting. This time, the base bid and was calculated by VLK Architect as the best value, and the low proposer was MBCM Management. The base bid on that building alone was $180,800. So if you took the $86,000 from the 2015 bond funds that we might commit, as well as the $140,000, that was $226,000 that was available. So now looking at, we're finally in the ballpark, so to speak, of being able to get this done. So it was decided at that point that maybe we proceed with the base building bid only, with College Station ISD with 2015 bond funds contributing $73,730, and Cougar Club $107,070, but with the understanding that they would also do the turf outside of the project. That would bring their contribution to around that $140,000 mark. So after much consideration, it was decided to proceed with a recommendation to the Board of Trustees for approval of MBCM Management Incorporated, funded as described, with the end result of having both high schools with covered batting facilities for both baseball and softball.
So question.
Yes.
The last three items we approved total over $10 million, and they didn't bring any of the heartburn the $73,000 have brought to the board members. Seems like we've been playing telephone within the community about what may or may not have transpired. So I'd like to understand, 2020, fall of 2020, Cougar Club approached the district to do the batting cage. At what point did the district decide to do the Consol softball dugouts?
Softball dugouts, it was on a project list. We started working with athletic administration, and they had that on their list of projects. So we were talking about that in the summer of 2022 when we were looking at all the projects, and that was actually done in the fall of 2022.
And we expended roughly $110,000.
About $111,000, yes, sir.
And then also after spring break, well, we anticipate to spend roughly $50,000 on the softball field?
I think it's less than that when we get the quotes in. We are getting quotes on replacing the turf for those covered facilities at softball, as well as replacing netting as well. But it should be less than 50,000 total, probably even the 30s.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ms. Strauss, thank you for explaining the process, because I think that was a question I had. How do we bring in private funds to supplement school funds, knowing that we're on a tight budget? Is there a policy or a ratio? Like, does it have to be 1-to-1? Does it have to be 100% privately funded? Is there any kind of guidance on?
No, there's no guidance on that. So one of the things is that we look at, especially when there's a donation for what we call real property, or personal property that's going to be attached that we're going to end up maintaining, is that we look at the long-term interest of the district. Is it something that's needed by the district? How are we going to maintain it for the future? Are we going to accept that? Because even if it's a donation or somebody donated funds for it, it ends up school district property and our responsibility in the long run. So we're looking at a number of things on if we proceed or accept those funds.
And so I guess what adds to the length of the process is the vendor who's going to do that work is still got to be in the co-ops. It can't just be, hey,
for
I
us
want
to
Horror
expend
Construction.
funds, we have to go through the required procurement process.
Even if it's private funds?
Yeah, because we're going to receive those private funds and they're going to be used to, we're going to add funds to it as well.
Okay.
And the check is, and the purchase order is issued by the school district.
Okay.
So when that happens, all procurement laws have to be followed.
Okay. And that's what I think speaks, like you said, a lot to the parents for sticking with it. I mean, it's been years in the making, and it takes a lot of diligence. So I appreciate both coach, and coach realize the importance of keeping these things both to our visibility, but also keeping the parents engaged. But I think, as been pointed out, the facilities don't make the teams. Look how successful we are with those scores we got from the architect. But I think it does show that we emphasize the safety of our students and that they have pride in where they go to school and where they play ball. But that's just come back. So we do the facilities assessment, and say we all agree that we need new water fountains, but there's not money for there. And Decker Holding says, I'll pay for all the water fountains, but you can't. But you have to use Jeff's water fountain installation. We can't do that.
No, sir.
And then that would drive up the price. That may affect the price. So I can't really cover 100% because y'all have installation, M&O.
Right. Yeah, and for that to happen, a lot of times we have very good discounts, but otherwise we do have to go through this process. We have to have an architect or an engineer involved in any project that's $50,000 or more that's going to alter a facility.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for the education.
So do we have like a formal system? I know there's not a policy, but do we have a formal system in place for these types of requests? Because, we have all kinds of booster clubs and PTOs that I mean, the purpose of them typically is kind of like the icing on the cake a lot of times, right? And they go to all these efforts to raise these funds. Is there a system in place that they're aware of to ask for matching or, whatever with the district?
What you described, there's a learning possibility in every situation, and I think that there was here, that learning opportunity. So through this, I think some of the things that we've gained is a very better process, at least for athletic requests, that they all go through the athletic director and assistant director, and they're maintaining a list because we want to make sure that it's something that's needed and on there and what else is needed. Some things, the price tag is just too big for us. We've had very tight budgets ever since I've gotten here. And so some of the things are too large. And of course, they're going to probably be on that bond committee list for them to consider.
Right.
So I think that the process has gotten a lot clearer and communicated better since then. And we are routing all of those through the appropriate director, whether it be fine arts or athletics, because they need to be in the loop. as well. When it comes to a PTO or a booster buying a piece of equipment, a lot of times, they do that without going through us directly with a vendor. But when you're talking about real property that's going to be attached and used for a very long time, that's a very different situation.
Right. There's another question I had. And is it advisable for, if it's going to be, more than just a piece of equipment, if it's going to be a structure, or, one time, years ago before I was on school board, I raised money with PTO to buy playground equipment at Southwood Valley. And I had no idea that we needed to come to the district about that, right? I'm like, we raised this money, we can do this. And luckily, Kimberly McAdams was at that school, and she was no longer on the board, but she had already served on the board, and she's like, nope, you have to go do this. And so I learned through that the appropriate channels, but I didn't know any of that prior to. So that I think is often helpful, and I think it's helpful for these groups to know that they need to come speak to the district prior to even going through the efforts to raise the money. Especially if they're going to need matching funds or, a portion of that, right? And also, like you mentioned, a list. I think that is something else that we need to be aware of. And I think having that list is important. I don't know if that can be made public, but I'm just trying to help out groups understand. And if there is a request, is that like documented somewhere so that everybody can know, oh, hey, this was requested, or this was brought up, 3 years ago, or 6 months ago, with this organization, just so that there's a list that all of those involved, administration that's involved has the ask. Is that making sense?
It does make sense. It sounds simple.
I know it sounds simple, but I'm just trying to think, because this one is tough for me, and I've talked to a couple of individuals and groups, not really listened to, and I think that there's some frustration in understanding the process.
That's what I thought was beneficial tonight. There is a process that we've got precedent both at. Sorry, that's what I found beneficial. The process was very obscure. Who do we start? Who do you talk to? We've refined the process, but I like seeing both, like Mr. Hall pointed out, like you point out, there's precedence now of the private-public partnership of the donations. Because I think that's one of the things I'm thinking about, almost like, I'm not going to say it like a GoFundMe, but things that aren't going to make that bond cut.
Right.
They're still desirable, possibly needed. And this is a great solution. I think we've got the community support where people, when they see that need, they will go fundraise, a little thermometer, this for our new playground, this for our new water fountains, what have you. So thank you for your work. And I know the athletic staff and the campus coordinators will do their best to help the parents go through that process. But also I would ask the parents to be patient with the committee, let the committee do their job. You can take notes, but let's let that run its course before we start trying to throw money at the solution.
But we have developed some guidelines. We call them guidelines, not policies, because that's what they are. So when those requests come to Mr. Hall or wherever, he directs them. You need to go through Coach Starnes or Ms. Simak before you come this way for athletics, or Mr. Eakes for fine arts, and route them through the correct person and let them bring them to us so that we can then see the entire picture. So I said, there's something we can learn from every process. So that's the positive.
So I'm probably beating a dead horse here, but just to follow up on that question. So, for example, when I know Mr. Melder had a proposal that he brought to us tonight, and he may have already done this, but so that would be something that would go through the campus coordinator into the
we would route to the athletic director and come our way for a discussion.
And same thing with fine arts, where the teacher would go to their campus coordinator for fine arts, and that would go to Mr. Eakes and so forth.
Yes.
Okay. So it's kind of a ground up as opposed to top to bottom.
But it does keep the everybody that needs to know about the project and the details about it, so that we know whether we support it or we not support it. It keeps all of that, and then it comes to the cabinet level, and we go from there. I don't make those decisions on my own. I take them to the cabinet, and we make a group decision on where we need to go from here.
Go ahead, Darren. Well, I think we're having this discussion tonight because there wasn't a good process in place. And so I think it's important that we are taking the time to discuss it. And there wasn't, if there was a list, it wasn't a list that the right people were seeing, and it wasn't maybe even generated,
Well, and it's an internal list that's ever evolving and changing. So it's not really something that we, produce, but we've used that list in preparing the bond projects, potential bond projects for the committee. So, but it's an ever evolving. Sometimes something falls off of that list because something else, became a higher priority. So it's an always changing document, but it needs to be kept with the program directors.
And I think some of the problem with this is just the timing of it, because like I said, we are creating a list of what our priorities are. I mean, we have just approved a committee to help do that for the district, to tell us what are the priorities. And when I first heard about this as potentially coming to us, my first question was, is this at the top of the list? Right? Is this the top priority we have right now? And I feel like we don't even have the answer to that because the committee's about to talk about that. So it's kind of bad timing for some reasons. The other thing I think part of this process is that it's coming from leftover bond money, and we probably are not going to have that problem. We talked about this earlier with the 2021 bond, and I say it's not a problem. It was nice that we had extra money from the 2015 bond, but can you tell us how much money is left? And again, any more about the process for spending? I mean, is this all just for spending that money over the last couple of years?
So first of all, you have to remember, 2015, we were not under the same rules that we are now. So everything was under one proposition. Athletics, built new campuses, everything was under one. So a lot more flexibility. But of that bond, there's two ways that we've had additional funds. One is some projects that came in under budget, and this was prior to my time, but they had projects come under, but we also had interest earnings that accumulated. We invested those funds after we sold bonds and as we use them, same way with the 2021 bond funds. So we invested those funds. So you have interest earnings as well as savings from projects that came under budget. So right now, those bond funds, there's $116,000 left. So if this project gets approved, that'd be $42,000. So how we decide what gets funded from that, first of all, for a construction project, this isn't a lot of money. And the last year, we had a number of needs that came through, facility related, that could be paid with bond funds. And we were so tight on general funds. So we did some of the things for Tiger Field, the athletic field house, those repairs, the dugouts that was talked about for softball. The 2015 bond funds were used for that as well. So we're looking at enhancements and projects that are needed throughout the district of a smaller dollar amount, and that we needed to proceed with. That's how we looked at, are we going to use the 2015 bond funds? Because I just didn't have enough general fund monies to do it. Last year we barely made it by with a balanced budget at the end of the year.
Ms. Horak, I move to approve the authorizing superintendent as stated in K4.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Decker, second by Dr. Payne. Any further discussion?
I did want to follow up on that. So you're saying there would be 42,000?
Yes.
Is that what you said remaining?
As of right now, about 42,500 left after this project.
Tonight I had a proposal I had never heard before that somebody, when Mr. Melder came up and said, could we do a similar arrangement with Consolidated? So right now that $42,000 is.
It's not committed at this point.
It's not committed to anything.
No, ma'am.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1.
Thank you.
That'll bring us to item L, executive session. We will retreat to the conference room and be back for open session later. All right, that brings us to item M1, consider and take possible action to approve mediated settlement agreement and TEA docket number 044-DM-0123.
I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and the school district's attorney and to direct the superintendent and the school district's attorney to proceed as discussed in closed session in TEA docket number 044-DM-0123.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Nolan, second by Mr. Ben. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak. Quick announcement, we don't need to have a lot of conversation around this evening, but I just wanted to officially announce that I have tenured my retirement to the Board of Trustees effective Friday, June 30th, 2023. Just after 32 years, it's time for me to move on to other aspects of life. I want to thank all of you for your support, and I'll be happy to assist with the transition and process however you ask me to assist. And again, thank you for your support over the years. I will tell you this, whomever has the opportunity to serve next will inherit an excellent group of people.
Thank you, sir. We will adjourn with that.